My name is Grace Jew, and today I'll be using the novel entitled The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon to talk to you about the recurring theme of the importance of communication in developing and maintaining stable relationships. As you'd expect, when communication isn't working well, it has a number of negative effects that occurred in the novel, and also reflects what happens in real life. In our day-to-day life, whether we realize it or not, we are always communicating with one another. This is not surprising because we are social beings. From the minute we wake up to the second we go to bed, we are always finding ways to communicate with the people around us. There are various ways we communicate, including both verbal and nonverbal forms. This novel shows that communication does not always have to be through the spoken word, and sometimes communication can take a turn for the worse, producing arguments and fights. This is especially true in this novel, as Christopher, an atypical anti-hero who the reader follows on his journey, lacks both the ability to interact verbally and cannot understand the nonverbal forms of communication and the people around him. On the surface, this novel is about a young protagonist named Christopher Boone who has a developmental delay that is similar to autism. He is brilliant and math comes to him very easily, and he multiplies prime numbers in his head, and has photographic memory, but like a hero in a tragedy, has a fatal flaw. Having autism makes him brilliant but also vulnerable. Christopher's behavioral issues appear similar to autism, causing him to have troubles articulating his thoughts clearly, and he doesn't communicate well with others, a very common behavioral trait found in individuals with autism. As a result, this causes many issues with how he interacts with others, and he is unable to understand the simplest of social cues from those around him, but we will see more about this later on. Some of the relationships that become affected by his autism-induced lack of communication include his parents' marriage, how adults in his life relate to each other, as well as his interaction with others. While it isn't surprising that someone like Christopher with autism might have difficulties with communication, one of the more interesting themes that this novel explores is how adults who should have no problems communicating seem to have the most serious issues. When we are first introduced to Christopher's father, Ed Boone, and their neighbor, Mrs. Shears, they do not seem to be on friendly terms, although it is suggested that prior to the death of Wellington the dog, that they were actually really good friends. Later in the novel, Mr. Boone reveals that he had killed her dog because he wanted to take out his anger on her, but he couldn't do so. The source of Mr. Boone's anger, you ask? Mr. Boone had misinterpreted Mrs. Shears' kindness for affection, and this miscommunication caused him to become angry and upset, causing him to kill Wellington. Worse still, this lack of communication sets the events of Christopher's separation from him. This misunderstanding of intentions between adults and unspoken anger is one form of miscommunication that is highlighted in this novel that results in relationships being broken. Parents are the very first role models for children. In the novel, the bond between his parents suffers and ultimately ends because of the lack of appropriate communication between his parents. Using Christopher's photographic memory, the reader is told that he used to think that his parents might get divorced because they had lots of disagreements and sometimes they despised each other. Their form of communication is more broken than that of Christopher. The reader comes to learn that his mother talks but cannot really communicate effectively and can only do so indirectly via letters. In many ways, her behaviors mirror that of her son, since he likes to hum loudly to block out the external world, and she does the same by avoiding confrontation whenever possible. The inability of his parents to communicate with each other forms the basis of their eventual separation and is the source of their unhappiness in the relationship. Inappropriate communication in the forms of arguments, in terms of avoiding confrontation, is another example Mark Haddon uses to underscore the importance of proper communication in making a relationship work. Christopher's brilliance can only take him so far, as he lacks the ability to communicate with the people around him. Due to Christopher's condition, his father makes poor decisions that ultimately affect the relationship because of the miscommunication that occurs between them. Chris realizes that his mother is still alive and that his father has been lying to him this entire time. Chris's relationship with his father becomes strained throughout most of the novel as a direct result of this miscommunication. Christopher can no longer trust his father, causing him to run away to his mother. This father-son relationship remains broken until Ed discovers a way to relate with him at a level that will allow Christopher to trust him again. Interestingly, in finally understanding that his son needs affection in a nonverbal manner when he brings him a new puppy to symbolize that their journey has come full circle. The ability to understand someone's intent is a key component of effective communication. In creating a positive family relationship, the novel shows in a powerful way that there must be a genuine and honest communication being shared. As a social species, it is important for humans to interact with each other in productive relationships. At the core of any relationship, communication is vital and is the foundation for a relationship to be successful. Although this novel may be about how a hero overcomes his flaws in understanding the external world to complete his journey, the more powerful message involves the theme of how tenuous the interactions between adults, between the parents themselves, and Christopher and his mother and father can become, and how these relationships require consistent communication for these relationships to be nurtured. Using the lens of an anti-hero who cannot understand nor communicate with the external world was a brilliant way for Mark Haddon to unwrap this truth for the readers of this novel.